Okay, we're back. For those of you, the Ustream channel just went down a little bit for us there. We're having a little bit of connectivity issues while I am streaming on the road from my lovely hotel room in Long Island. So hopefully you're staying with us. I think we only missed just a second there. So what we're talking about is now, after May 1st, some of the things that come rolling down the pipeline throughout the summer, talking about how waitlist decisions might be made, how that might affect college numbers over the summer, which is something that we, in the admissions and enrollment areas, call summer melt, those students that are melting away from us, and students that we might need to pull back in over the summer. So there's a huge customer service piece and a huge kind of relationship building piece that comes in to play at this time, really almost more than ever when we're trying to now bring these accepted, committed students into the fold of our whole university, our whole college student body. So Mike, what are some of the things that you've been doing at Emerson to kind of work with these students during this transition time?
Well, I think it's two things really that I look at when it comes to how to assist our students. And the first thing is getting our own act together internally, because I think what tends to happen is that the student sees the admission office as the one-stop shop for all things financial aid, housing, student accounts, billing, the tuition, and the admission office needs to be well prepared to answer any of those questions or get an answer quickly in the background and then give the response. So one of the things we've done internally is create this group called the post-deposit group, where we meet at certain times of the year where we know that there needs to be some talk around what communications are going out to students, what are they receiving in the mail, when does that go out. So that includes groups on campus like housing. So how assignment, what the process is like, how can admission help with that process and get the students to fill out whatever paperwork or online forms that they need. There's also financial aid, so staying in touch with financial aid and asking them when are financial aid decisions going out, if there's anything holding up the decisions from going out, how can we answer those questions, who's the best point person to talk to, and then other pieces like advising. So when can students expect to get info from advising on what their first year schedule is going to look like? So this group meets, I think it's about every 2 weeks right now. We have the meeting and just going through the summer calendar and asking those important questions up front, so we're not being reactive later in the process. We're being proactive now. And then the other side of it is that for the students looking at what they need to do, I think students love checklists. And they really appreciate when a school makes it easy for them to see what they need to do in what order and by what date. So I know admission websites tend to be very complicated because they love to put marketing into their pages, but they tend to not see the importance when it comes to what do I need to do at what point. So we've made an attempt over the past couple of years for those students that, either you're accepted and you want to deposit as one checklist, or you've deposited what are the things you need to do over the summer to prepare for your enrollment. So we have two very clearly defined sections on the site just for those students. And then other pages that lead them to events, lead them to the Facebook group, lead them to other things. But we really want to separate the two and make two separate things that they have to see. One is how do I get things done? The other one is how do I meet students and come to on-campus events?
Yeah, and really those tidbits of information can't be delivered to students enough. Right. No matter how many times or how clear you think it is that you're showing where that housing application is, what they need to do to accept their financial aid award, really kind of simple things to things that I actually haven't thought about that are student concerns. So you get an onslaught of questions at this time, no matter how well you set up your information. You're going to have students that are continuing to look for this information in different places and not finding it. But the checklists are so great, and I actually I stole one of Seton Hall's really awesome checklists for prospective students last week, and I've been now stealing a lot of things at college fairs that I like. It's a new hobby of mine. But checklists for the admitted students are just as important because, again, they've never gone to college before, so they don't really know what to do next. Let's talk a little bit about what we're doing as far as connecting students and building relationship with students. It's not just about us building relationships with them. That's actually probably the last thing that they want to do. They've been sucking up to the admissions office for 6 months now, and now they want to meet other students. They want to meet other current students. They want to meet other admitted students. And there's a lot of different ways that they can do this on their own, but it's really helpful when the institution does kind of step in and make this space for them. And I know both of us have been involved in this for the last few years and what we're able to do with social media to connect students. So do you want to start a little bit just talking about why institutions should create these things and why the students shouldn't just be left to their own devices? And then we can talk a little bit about what we've been doing.
Sure. So I think the biggest platform that students want to connect on is Facebook. So I'll talk a little bit about why, just in the past 3 years, why I've seen it become more and more important to actually create an official spot for these students to meet and then remind them of that official spot, and not necessarily to try to get rid of their own created groups and pages and everything, but it's important to still have that one spot. The main reason for that is because you may assume that every single student is very savvy with Facebook, and just because 100 students out there found the Facebook page or the Facebook group that you have them liking or joining doesn't necessarily mean the other 80% of your incoming student going to find it. It's incredible sometimes that I see we'll have really, really good engagement on our Facebook group. Then we have an on-campus accepted student event. And out of that, I know at least 20 or 30 new requests to join will come out of that, just because those students never heard about the Facebook group before and said, oh, I never knew an admission office did something like this, and want to keep in touch with all those students that they met at the on-campus event. So I think it's important to create that landing spot to make it easy to find, and also just so you can have every piece of communication that's going out be consistent. Gotcha. So when someone's on the phone with an accepted student asking about financial aid, and they leave the phone call saying, hey, if you want to stay in touch with more students, you could just go to whatever the URL is and search for this on Facebook, or any email communication that goes out, or any counselors that are on the road, they're all sending the students to the same place, and it becomes ubiquitous that, oh, you're accepted, you should probably go to this one spot that is the spot where the most students are attending. Yeah. You don't want to segment the early.
Right, and it's not because the admissions office wants to control the conversation or to censor the conversations, but there is a level of quality control, I think. Right. And if you don't make these spaces for students, they're going to make them anyway. It's going to be harder for them to find each other, and then the rumor mill can start. We also see a lot of really helpful current students that find our pages, but sometimes that helpful current student who went through orientation 2 years ago and is telling them everything about what orientation is going to be like, but they don't know that we've totally changed orientation this year, and it's going to be nothing like what they had. So even when a really helpful current student is providing information, sometimes it's not always the correct information. So having someone there, or having a team of student ambassadors in there also that have the right information that can really make sure that the quality of the information that students is receiving is the highest level.
And I find that current students are your biggest help when it comes to this process, but there's also some times to really limit the amount of influence that you have over the group as an admission office or as current students. One of the things that I found last year that was really surprising to me was when I segmented the groups and I surveyed students that took part in either the Facebook group, Facebook page, or last year we used the Integral Schools app. they all used each platform in a very different way, and they loved the idea that the Facebook group was their own place to have conversations with each other. There was very little interaction with admissions staff members on there. They didn't have to worry that current students were seeing everything they were posting. Sometimes you just need to make a space for them. Mm-hmm. So what we did this year is we have our Facebook Class of 2016 private group that I'm, sort of that fence that is approving anyone that matches an accepted student that we have. Sometimes it takes a little bit more digging. They don't use their real name on Facebook, but they can usually figure it out. And we kept it all through until the accepted students. No current students. The only staff members that were in there were about 2 or 3 people from admission. And I can tell you within the past 6 months, I've probably only posted about 5 or 6 comments back to students when they mentioned me. They said, hey, can you help us out with this technical thing? So that went really well, and I think it was because we respected their space. We respected them enough to say, we will let you talk and meet each other, and we're not going to step in and try to market in this group. But if you want to create a page that sends out some marketing or your own separate group that has current students in it, you let them decide after the fact. But I think it's important to establish that one, meeting, that one party for them to join, that we say, look, we're hands off. We're going to let you guys talk and hope that engagement picks up from there.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk a little bit about some of those other platforms that are available. Last week we had Nicole Antini on, and she talked to me a little bit about what she's doing with Varsity Outreach, which is a service provider for apps on Facebook. You've worked with Integral. Full disclosure, Integral is a sponsor of Admissions Live. But I actually am not working with Integral this year. I'm working with another company called Red Rover. And we're trying something a little bit different. So for those folks that are working within Facebook and are curious why these other service providers are out there, what they offer, why a school would look for something else outside of Facebook, let's chat a little bit about that quickly.
Sure. Do you want me to briefly describe why we went with something like Integral Schools app?
Yeah. What was it because of challenges you were facing? Was it because of something that a Facebook app offered over what Facebook was offering?
Yeah. So when I first saw what the Integral app could do, I saw it as a really interesting extension of what was already available in Facebook, but added some features that I thought would be really useful for the incoming students. And then one feature that was really useful for the agents at the end of the year. But one of the best things that you could see is that students were using the Integral Schools app. For someone that's not familiar with it, they have a demo that you can see on their site, but also the way to think of it is kind of a Facebook within a Facebook. So a lockdown community that someone has to enter their email address to join, and what you do is you provide Integral the email addresses of the accepted students. So they basically maintain that door that lets students into the group. And once they're in, then they can do similar things that they can do in Facebook, but one of the biggest benefits is the search capability. So they can search by students that have the same hometown, search students that have the same major that they do, search students that are in the same dorm that they got placed, have the same interests. So I saw it as a natural extension of what students want to find. So they're going to the Facebook group and they're all saying they got accepted. The very next thing they want to find out is who else from my major was accepted or who else from New Jersey was accepted. So I saw that as a huge benefit within the schools app, and students were using that a lot. And the other benefit of it is that the admission office could then see some of the data on the background of the students that were joining this, how many other friends they had within the group. It's almost like a way to start working on retention, because you want to see these students that are actively engaged, have some other friends that are going to the school. You may have some of those students that joined and then never posted, never logged back into their account. That can help with some of your predictions on who will actually deposit at your school. So I think going with an app like that, you really need to do your research and look at your own institutional goals and say, is there something that we wish this could do that we're not getting? And how can we use this app to get that? Versus the other side of people just look at the bright, shiny things that you can do, but don't know how to apply it to institutional goals.
Right.
So I think that's what we spent a lot of saying, how can we use these? We have these two needs, and what fulfills them the best. And we found that the integral schools app did that really well last year.
Yeah, and likewise, I'd been using Facebook for all that I possibly could, and was looking at our institutional goals, seeing what I could meet with what Facebook was providing. And for me, I saw what changes were being made with Facebook groups. I saw what pages were going to be also changing to with new timeline, and frankly, I was a little irked that that Facebook would continue to make changes to what I had perfected over the last couple years. So I was really frustrated with some of the changes that were rolling out this year, and that's why I started looking outside of just the traditional Facebook platforms that are given to us, and started looking at Facebook apps, and looking at outside private social networks for students. And what we ended up doing was a little bit different than what I expected. I hooked up with a company called Red Rover, and we ended up building a social directory of students, because one of the things, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you're talking about why students love the Integral app so much, is that searchability that Facebook doesn't allow anymore. And I can remember when I first got a Facebook account, one of the things I loved to do was go into the advanced search, and to look for people that maybe were from my hometown, people that were in my network, maybe people that were in my high school network, and just see who was on Facebook. And we don't have that on Facebook anymore, and it's something that is really, really helpful for anyone that's coming into a new community that's trying to connect with one another. So what we ended up building was outside of the Facebook world, in the rat.edu world, but it is a social directory of admitted students that they can do similar kinds of things. I try not to use the word social network because I really don't want to replace Facebook. And I think when you say social network, you expect there to be photos and events and all the kinds of things that you can do on Facebook, and you can't do that all with what we've created. But what it does very well is create this directory of students that does have overlaying social networking capabilities. And so I'm happy to kind of share a sneak peek of some of that stuff with folks. One of the things I can show just real quickly, what we've been doing, and I think we can kind of relate, these same kinds of conversations are happening. They're happening on Facebook, they're happening in Facebook groups, they're happening in apps that schools have been using, but kind of getting back to the quality of conversations that students can have over the summer, and leading into orientation and all these other kinds of things that they're gearing up to do. These connections are just really, really important and really powerful. So just kind of a sneak peek at what is going on the Loop, which is the Red Rover platform. We've got it, I don't know if you can really see this, but I'm just going to show you very quickly. We've got it tagged as a beta because we're actually looking for user feedback to add things that the students want. So tagging it beta kind of lets us kind of pull some more of what students are looking for, and not have them feel like this is the end-all be-all of the product that we're working with. So this is just a kind of sneak peek at my profile. You can see on the left-hand side, it has information about who I am, where I'm from. It has the interests that I've tagged. I have it linked so you can see my About Me page that's actually pulling information from my LinkedIn profile. In a biography that I just quickly wrote up, you'll see that there's tabs to follow people and how many followers I have, to edit my interests, and things like that. Some of the next things I want to show are just some of the conversations that have been going on, and why students are looking for these social networks, I think, is really to connect with others. And Mike, feel free to kind of chime in while we have some of these slides up. But I think students just really do want to connect. They want to meet each other. They're not on campus together. So this first slide here just shows how obsessed students are with connecting, I guess. We've got a student who posted at 6 o'clock in the morning as soon as she got up just to say, hello, I'm up. How are you? And a student that at 1:30 in the morning was still up and was wondering who else was still up. Students that are kind of ranking their priorities of things to do, saying that the last thing I want to do is fill out my financial aid information, and the thing that's top on my priority right now is talking to all of you on the loop. So students are really, really kind of into and obsessed with the social media stuff that we hand them, and are really, really active with it once they have a place to kind of play around. And I'm sure you've seen that kind of across the boards at Emerson too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's really interesting to see from the student's perspective. They're savvy enough with social media to know that they can have an impact on campus and have influence on campus. Yep. Even before they attend your school and go to orientation. So there's those students out there that want to be the trendsetters, want to be the conversation starters, and they're really important to have at your school because, there might be a student that hesitates to post that first wall post, but they'll comment on everything that's out there. Yep. So encouraging that, recognizing that, seeing what students are going to do to try to get engagement, those are the same kind of students you want to eventually be some of the thought leaders on campus, so the orientation leaders, RAs. So it's really important to embrace that and celebrate it when it happens.
Yeah, definitely. We actually already have a student this year that has been nominated for class president because he is probably just saying funny things that people like, but they're already kind of thinking about what their roles are going to be on campus when they get there, and that's pretty neat.
Yep.
I know you've seen some other kind of interesting interactions going on in your groups, but I just want to point out a couple more so I can forget about these slides and get back to our conversation. So I just want to, and this, it might be, again, hard to see, but students, I think one of their main reasons for joining these network is to make friends, and we've talked a little bit about that. Some of the interesting things that I've seen using a network outside of Facebook is that Facebook has strange limitations on what students can do. So I had one student whose Facebook account was actually, she wasn't allowed to add any more friends for 2 weeks because she had added too many friends at once, meeting everyone in our loop. And then another student who was actually pointing people back to Facebook. So he said, follow me on the loop, let's connect, but also add me on Facebook. So it's not that Facebook's going away. One of the other things that I thought was pretty interesting was that Facebook was blocked on a lot of high school sites. So if they're in the library, if they're in study hall, Facebook was blocked for them, but our network that was outside of Facebook was not blocked, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. They should probably be doing their homework. And then the last little tidbit that I have here is that we launched this before May 1, so there was decision-making happening in these spaces, and that's where current students actually really do help chime in and tell them what a great time that they're having on campus. This student here had also indicated that she was visiting campus, and another student commented and said, I haven't had the ability to visit campus yet, and I really want to. Will you tell me what it's like? I'm trying to make my decision too. So those little stories are invaluable, and I know that, Mike, you've had some similar kinds of unexpected results come out of these networks. So what are the kinds of things that you saw that you thought were interesting or unexpected?
Sure. So one of the things is you tend to have, if you have your accepted students, I've heard arguments in the past for separating out your accepted students from the deposited students because you feel almost like you need them to talk about different things. But what happens, I've always argued against that. I love when the whole group is together. It's because you have those students that deposit that are influencing the other accepted students or answering questions like you're talking about. They never got to go visit campus. Well, here's 30 students who just went to the last accepted student day and can tell you their point of view. So I think that's one of the biggest features. Another thing that I would see is that students will have really great conversation for months, especially if they're accepted early. And then all of a sudden, just tell everyone, hey, I'm sorry to say this, but I decided to go to X school and not go to Emerson College. But it's been amazing getting to know all of you. I wish you the best of luck. And then there's a comment thread where they're wishing each other luck, trying to stay in touch. And I think it's just you're doing a service to the students to help them connect. And maybe something doesn't work out at the school. Maybe something doesn't work out for a student that comes to Emerson that met someone at another school. They have a network out there of students at other colleges studying similar things, may have similar interests that they can keep in touch with. And if they didn't make the initial college choice that turned out to benefit them, they can make that at the second step and transfer. So it's really interesting to see those kind of conversations happen when you allow students to have conversations before they attend.
Yeah, and that's almost, I mean, that's kind of pointing into a conversation that I wanted to spin off from, which is, where do these networks live after the summer, after students are enrolling? And enrolling in the fall, I mean. So we know that these conversations will certainly continue to happen in these networks, especially around the time that housing placement comes out, when they find out who's living together and where their room is, when their class schedules come out and they find out what classes they're going to be in together. You'll definitely see conversation spikes around that time. But what happens when students are off to orientation and orientation's not run by your admissions office? Or what happens when students get to campus and are no longer the responsibility of the admissions office, and they're now in the hands of our student affairs and academic affairs folks? So you kind of you started talking a little bit about how enrollment might handle tapping into these groups for future transfer students, which is a really interesting kind of thing. But what about all of those current students that are coming, and where do they end up?
Sure. So even if orientation doesn't necessarily live within the admission office at your school, I don't know how it's run. I know at our school we have a really, really awesome orientation office that helps build all the programs and does a lot of outreach during the summer. Even though I'm in enrollment, I never cared. So I went immediately to orientation and said, hey guys, how can we get you involved in what we're doing? Oh. And what tended to happen is that I would have them create an orientation, class of whatever group. And slowly we would let the students know, hey, if you want to start talking to your orientation leaders, there's this group that you can join that's a natural progression to the college. So I wouldn't say, hey, I'm getting rid of this class of group and immediately send them an invite and say, go here now. It's just one additional feature. So one of the things that we didn't provide the students in the class of 2016 group is the ability to interact with orientation leaders. So we give them an additional option. If you have questions about the college, questions about moving in, classes, things going on at the school, what orientation is going to be like, here's this pocket of all these students on Facebook you can talk to today. So after that orientation group, then I think there's just this natural thing that happens where students will join whatever groups you want them to join at the school. So whether it's their organizations, class groups, I mean, Facebook's trying to do this groups at schools thing. That's not really picking up too much yet, but I see there being a lot of potential for something like that. But I think just the application of it hasn't really arrived. So I don't worry if the engagement goes down in the class of, whatever Facebook group. I just worry that the students had a transition where they can eventually lead to find groups on campus that they can join up with and organizations that are really engaging to them. And if they want to go back and use the class of group to say, I have this book to sell, or I'm looking to move off campus or something like that, more power to them. And they can, they're going to decide what the best use of the group is at that point.
Yeah, definitely. And I see that too. Surveys for classes and those kinds of things are kind of what the group ends up being used for. And I think that, that is kind of the nature of what Facebook allows students to do. You can join groups, you can stay in them, you don't need to be active in them anymore, you don't need to keep up just with that group, but you can remain a member and utilize it when you need to. One of the things that I was really interested in, and kind of a reason why I broke out of the Facebook platform for my students, was this idea of how does this thing that you're using stay relevant to you during your time? And how can I use these newly accepted students that become current students to be advocates for prospective students that are coming in? Because they have just gone through the process. They made it through successfully. They made it there. And now for this new group of students who is trying to navigate the admission system, can we use students that have just done it to help them through the process? So I'm looking to hopefully open up what we're doing with Red Rover to prospects, hopefully opening it up to the full funnel at RAT as well, current students and alumni, just see what happens. And I really kind of want them to use it as a space to be RAT students. One of the things that had really stuck in my mind when I was trying to explain why not Facebook, and I think a lot of the students that choose to come to my institution are kind of one-offs in their high school. They're really passionate about what they're doing, and you know, some of those really technically minded students don't have other students like them at the school that they're going to. So they may have other friends on Facebook, but to post on Facebook, you know, what they're doing, they might, you know, have no one to connect with there, and they might even get some slack from their friends at high school for talking about something that's so geeky. But in our space, they can really kind of go and geek out and find a lot of other people that want to do the same thing. And it's not in that Facebook space. So I've seen a little bit of that going on, and with private groups and those kinds of things on Facebook, they can certainly have that same experience. So it's not to say that it can't happen in a private group in Facebook, but there's something about kind of disconnecting them from that space that I'm finding really interesting in their activities. So I'm hopefully going to do a lot of research on that over the summer and see what was really going on in these last few weeks. And who knows? Are there any other kinds of things? I know we're kind of getting close to 3 o'clock and you have a meeting to run to. But other kinds of things that other folks should be aware of that are going on, and you know, any kind of tips to surviving May 1 if it's a hectic day in your office?
Well, I guess here's a couple things to look forward to, I guess, is, you know, if you do make your class, let's expect everything goes great today, and by the end of the day, all those deposits that you thought would come in do come in. A couple of things to be excited about over the summer, if this happens over the summer at your school. One of the big things is roommate selection. We were talking about housing before and how that becomes one of these big events that students kind of rally around and talk to each other. So one of the things that I saw that I just think is hilarious, and I think it's going to pick up more and more, and you need to think of ways to apply this to your school if you're not already doing it. It might not be the best course of action on Facebook, but what students are doing is they're finding floor plans of the school. Some schools post them publicly, and when they do get their roommate assignment, they'll tag themselves in that floor in the room that they're going to be in. And I think one of the cool benefits of that is that students will then see all of the other students on their floor before they even get there. So now they're having conversations in the comment thread of the photo saying, you know, 6th floor of the little building is going to be awesome. Can't wait to meet you guys. And I know you use a system called Star Res, right, to help with student placement and everything else. So I think it's going to be a really interesting transition over the next few years as, you know, more and more students want to meet each other virtually before they attend the rooms. You know, it could be one of those things that helps with retention. It could be a thing that gives students more power over who they're staying with and how they're connecting with each other before they move into that dorm room.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's kind of our approach that we've been doing with Star Res, which is giving students a lot of control over their roommate selection process this year. So we'll see how that rolls out. Yeah, and at the same time you see that roommate selection spike, depending on how your university does it, the course selection time is another time that students are really starting the conversations, who's going to be in what class together, and they're talking with current students about professor selection. So another, you know, if you're looking for a way to really engage with these students, make their lives easier around these times. They're going to be excited. They're going to have questions. And if there's a way that you can facilitate them connecting with one another, they're going to absolutely love you for it. Before you go, can you just tell us a little bit about what you've done with Move-In Day in the past?
Sure. Yeah, so one of the things you have to think about, we've talked about all this awesome content that lives on these social platforms that students are taking part in, but we don't want to forget mom and dad, too. And I don't necessarily want to say, yeah, go create Facebook groups for the parents and do this and do that, but it's important to let the parents celebrate the same kind of things the students are celebrating. So one of those opportunities is Move-In Day. So if you promote it correctly, you're going to have students sharing pictures on Facebook, doing YouTube videos. Your orientation leaders are going to be tweeting with a hashtag. If you can really get that kind of stuff going on social media, one of the best things to do is curate and collect that into a story and then put that out in the press and say, this is what we did for Move-In Day, so that it's easily digestible to those groups that might not necessarily be on the social platforms every single day, like your incoming students. So we use Storify to do that. And I posted a social media curated events blog post on EDU Guru that I'll share right after the show. But
awesome.
Basically what it did is that it allowed us to collect what happened in a linear day and just repurpose that into a news story and come out with really rich content from all campus life that was, submitting things on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Flickr. And all we did was promote them creating content, and then we would do the chore of, collecting it and putting it out in a story. They didn't have to worry about, go to this website to be able to post this thing.
Right.
And it turned out really well. We had about 4,000 views of that from our Move-In Day, which was just the Storify and a few extra tidbits about our current president helping out. And so I think that's one of those really successful things that other schools could easily do if they have students on campus producing media during a day like that.
Definitely. Yeah. Awesome tidbit. There's so much that we can do that we're not doing. That the technology is there. It's just harnessing it. So, Mike, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy day today and sneaking over to Admissions Live in between meetings. And I wish everyone a very happy May 1st. Mike, best of luck with the new gig.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure it's going to be awesome, and you're going to rock. We will miss you in the enrollment world, but I'm sure that you'll be able to kind of relate a lot of what's going on in your new position to what you've been doing in enrollment and give us tips back. So we'll be looking forward to those.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We are signing off. We will be back next Tuesday, fingers crossed, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, every week on higheredlive.com. So again, thank you everyone, and a very, very